Welcome to the first Florida Loves Animals podcast. This podcast is being done for all of us animal lovers out there, whether you love dogs, cats, wildlife, whatever animal you love. We're going to talk about stories that are going on with our animals in Florida, the good, the bad. This podcast is to empower you that you can channel your love for animals and make a difference for all the animals in the state. Or when you hear of something bad happening to an animal, you have the power to make a difference. The difference in this podcast, I've seen a lot of YouTube videos that discuss awful animal stories, and you listen to it like, okay, that was terrible. Okay, and now I feel bad. And then what? And then what? And then we just are left feeling bad that this animal cruelty situation happened. And what do? The animal's already hurt or likely dead. And this podcast, we're going to talk about the stories briefly, but more importantly, we're going to tell you what you can do to transfer that negative energy, that sadness, that frustration you feel, and channel it into something positive and good. So you're going to feel good at knowing that you've made a difference. So in this podcast, we're going to give you the information you need to feel like put you more in control with your emotions, so that when you're upset about something that's happened to an animal, you can feel like, I did something. I am going to try to make a difference. I matter, and I'm going to make sure that what happened to this animal, it doesn't happen again. This podcast is being filmed in early June about animal stories that happened in May of 2023. And it doesn't matter if you're listening to this podcast 1 week, 3 months, 6 months, or a year from now. Why it's important to listen to the stories that are happening to animals in Florida is for two main reasons. Number one, the people who have hurt animals and who have committed animal cruelty crimes, they are going through the criminal justice system, and we have to make sure that the criminal justice system deals them a heavy hand and that they don't get away with their crimes. And it takes a while, so when you're hearing these stories, likely the criminal case that you hear about in this podcast will still be going on months, or possibly, if it's a big case, years later, and you can still do something to help the animals that were the victim in that animal cruelty case. The second reason why listening to this podcast, if it's a month, a year from now, is that you are going to hear stories about what has happened in the Florida State Legislature, so you can decide for yourself, is this person someone that I want to vote for again? So that is why hearing the stories that I'm presenting to you at any time is still going to be important, because likely that person is still in the legislature, and you would want, if you love animals, you're going to want to know what they're doing. And not many other podcasts, I couldn't find any, which is why I started the podcast, to say what's going on with the people who are in charge of making rules, and who is following up to make sure they are passing laws to help animals. And when I get frustrated, why isn't anything being done? I look at the Florida legislature and I find out who is doing the good things, who's helping, and who doesn't seem to be helping at all. So for this legislative session, and for those that don't know, our Florida legislative session is all of 60 days long. It was only from March until May 5th this year. And that is the only amount of time that legislators have to review the bills and pass the ones they like, and ignore or don't pass the ones they don't care about or don't like. And there's not enough news coverage, especially for all of us who love animals in Florida, to talk about what's going on. Who loves animals? Who doesn't love animals in our Florida legislature? I'm never going to mention Republican or Democrat because it doesn't matter. Political parties are dividing us. And honestly, if you love animals and are working towards protecting them, then you're good with me. And there are a lot of issues that have to be worried about. Obviously, the economy and childhood education, and the list goes on and on. But it doesn't mean you can't also focus on issues that affect animals. So that's why I'm creating this podcast, to let you know who in your county is voting one way or another, and then it's up to you to decide. Is that person worth keeping? Is that person worth voting for? How often do all of us look at a political party, one candidate and another candidate in different political parties, and don't really care for either of them? And who do you vote for at that point? And you feel like you're tossing a coin. Well, have you ever thought, do they like animals? Are they a dog lover? If you're an animal lover, you know one of the tests is, does my dog like this person? And if this person is not an animal person, regardless of party, should they be representing us? Are they reflecting our values? That's up to you. The representative and senators I'm going to name in this video, I'm not saying they're bad people or good people. All I am telling you is that the people mentioned in this video are chairs of their respective committees. And when a bill is filed, they have the power to decide if they're going to help, hurt, or ignore a bill. And since they're in charge, once a bill gets filed, if it doesn't move in their committee, then we should want to know, why not? If you have the power and there are bills that will help animals, why didn't you do more? Most of the work was already done by getting the bill together and filed. So what was stopping you? And it's just an open-ended question that you would want to ask. Look, I voted for you, and this bill was important to me. What happened here? So I'm not calling them out as bad people, certainly not. It's just to provide information to you in Florida, if you love animals, that I would think you would want to know. And it's up to you to decide if this person acted or voted legislatively the way you would want them to. And it's to give you another look at them. If you're in the center and you don't know who to vote for, it will give you an idea of where this person's heart is. And if you're like me and you love animals, you judge other people by how they care about animals. And if they care about animals, it doesn't matter what party they are, they're helping animals. And you can agree or disagree on multiple different issues. If you're like me, I never 100% agree with anybody. I don't agree with my husband all of the time. But it doesn't mean you have to find someone who on the majority reflects your beliefs. And if you never thought about it, maybe you never thought about it. Well, I love animals. I love my dog. I love my cats. I love dolphins. I love tortoises. I love panthers. And if you love all these things, one of the questions maybe should be, well, does the person I'm voting for care about animals like the way I love them and want to protect them? And are they doing anything? And it's just one more thing for you to consider when you're looking at somebody, because oftentimes most of us don't fall to one extreme of a political spectrum, and you have to look at multiple issues. What do they feel? How does the representative feel about this issue? How does it feel about that issue? And sometimes some of us are like, I'm still kind of torn between these two. You can see the good on both candidates. Well, then maybe a tiebreaker could be, do they love animals? The first bill we're going to discuss, I was so excited about. Thanks to Senator Jennifer Bradley, Baker County area, and Representative Cross in the Pinellas County area, they put forth a bill called the Appointment of Courtroom Animal Advocates. In this bill, it would be up to a judge to assign a volunteer attorney to help with cases involving animals. So, for example, you have a big hoarding case with dozens or hundreds of animals in either dogfighting cases or unscrupulous breeders, bad breeders. When you have cases like that, the prosecutor is obviously overwhelmed with the number of dog victims. And honestly, the prosecutor has a lot to do. And how are they supposed to investigate all of the animal victims in large cases like that? Well, enter in this courtroom animal advocate where the judge says, okay, I'm going to appoint a lawyer so that they can help with the issues involving this animal. And how helpful would that be to our court system and to the animals? That's a great idea, right? It never went anywhere. Why? Why don't we ask Tommy Gregory of Manatee County? He was the chair of a committee that was supposed to hear this bill, and he never brought it up. Why? The second person, Senator Clay Yarborough of Nassau and Duval County. He was the chairperson of his committee to hear this bill. If these chair people won't hear the bill, it's not going anywhere and it's not going to become law. So why did Representative Gregory of Manatee and Senator Clay of Nassau not want to hear this bill? You could have helped animals and you didn't. So if you're ignoring it or blocking it, why? Okay, the next bill I was super excited about was a bill that was called the Retail Sale of Cats and Dogs. How many of us are concerned with the pet overpopulation problem in Florida? How many of us know that Florida ranks in the top 5 states for the most euthanasias? And what's being done about it? We need our Florida legislature to act. And thanks to Senator Tom Wright of Brevard and Representative Killebrew of Polk County, they were trying to help. They submitted this bill called the Retail Sale of Cats and Dogs, and basically it would prohibit pet stores from selling puppies from puppy mills. If you don't know, the pet stores that you see everywhere in Florida typically source their puppies from out of state. And typically, they're from out-of-state puppy mills. If you don't know what a puppy mill is, Google it, and you will find plenty of information on what a puppy mill looks like. But long story short, it is when someone breeds hundreds of dogs and their welfare is ignored. Either they're not being taken care of by a vet, they're housed outside with no AC or other kind of shelter. And you can look at pictures of what a puppy mill is. And typically these are outside of the state of Florida, although we do have puppy mills here, I'm sure. And the pet stores, instead of coordinating with shelters and saying, hey, pet shelters, you guys seem overrun. Why don't you adopt out your dogs from our pet stores? They're not doing that because that wouldn't make them enough money. They are buying puppies from out of state, trucking them into Florida and selling them to you for likely thousands of dollars. I've read $3,000, $5,000 on Yelp reviews, and I cannot believe how much money people are spending on these dogs when you can get a dog who's had its shots and neutered at the shelter for $100, or if you go to a rescue, a couple of hundred. Anyway, so this bill that was filed by Senator Tom Wright and Representative Killebrew, thank you guys so much for trying to help, but unfortunately, Representative Tyler Soroy of Brevard would not hear the bill in his committee. Why not, Senator Soroy? What's wrong with trying to stop the pet overpopulation by preventing stores from trucking in hundreds or thousands of puppies from out of state when we already have enough dogs? The same for Senator Jay Trumbull of Bay County, Calhoun County, and a few other counties. Why, you were in charge of that committee. Why didn't you hear that bill? This would help the pet overpopulation. So why did these guys just basically ignore it or not help push this through? I don't know. If he's your representative, ask him. If you care, ask him politely. Hey, email their office and say, hey, I heard about the retail sale of cats and dogs. I understand you were the chairperson. This was important to me. Why didn't you, as the chairperson, why didn't you hear that? And again, if I'm pointing people out because they were the chairs of a committee and they're the ones with the power to hear a bill in order to push it along the process to get it to become law. And without these guys' cooperation, these bills just sit on a desk. If you are a dog lover and are concerned about or heard about all of our Florida shelters being super full and overflowing, rescue groups are at their wits' end with the amount of dogs that need to be rescued. So we have an issue with people accidentally breeding or breeding on purpose and there are not enough homes. So one of the big issues is that there is no regulatory framework really to monitor people who are what we call backyard breeders. They just have dogs and either, oops, I'm breeding now, or they're intentionally trying to make money off these poor animals. Well, Representative Cheney of Pinellas, a huge thank you to her. She won a big award by the Humane Society of the United States for being, I think, one of the Florida legislators of the year because of all the good stuff she's done to help animals. You'll have to look that up. But she loves animals. And also thank you to Senator Jonathan Martin of Lee County. So Lee County and Pinellas, you both have really good people over there who are trying to help animals because they filed a bill called the dog breeding bill. Thanks to these two people, they were trying to file a bill to get a grip on the backyard breeding that is happening in Florida. Arguably, the reason we are having so many pets and euthanizing so many pets is because people aren't spaying and neutering, and so people are having accidental puppy litters, and people are backyard breeding and not really paying attention to, do you already have a standby person to take care of that puppy once you're breeding it? People think of, how am I going to sell it? But they don't have any buyers when they bred the dog, when a good breeder will already have people lined up to buy that dog. You're not, some friend or cousin is not sharing something on Facebook saying, hey, so-and-so had a litter. Does anyone want to buy a puppy? That's not, you already know. Red flag, that's not a good breeder. You already know. You don't have to hear anything else. It doesn't matter what your friend says, what your cousin says, that person is not a good breeder. Why? Every good breeder that I have ever met has a list, a wait list of people. So they know when I breed my dog this year, I've got 8 people who want to buy my dog. They don't have to go asking around on Craigslist. They don't have to say, hey, friend, cousin, why don't you go share my post so I can get rid of these dogs, so I can sell these puppies? Red flag. If that backyard breeder was skimping and just looked up YouTube videos on how to do something instead of hiring a vet to save money, then that mother dog possibly did not get the nutrition and medical care that she needed in order to produce a healthy puppy. So just because you got a pure breed, just because you got from a breeder who's AKC registered, it doesn't mean you're going to get a perfectly healthy puppy. back to the point, which is this dog breeding bill, thanks to Senator Martin and Representative Cheney. It basically said that there is a presumption that a breeding female dog is being used for breeding purposes, such that people have to have a license, or it authorizes the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to investigate and make sure these dogs are being taken care of. And one of the most important, this is not a perfect bill, it was something though. One of the other key factors of this bill was that it created a whistleblower provision, so that if you see your neighbor doing something wrong in breeding, massive breeding, you could report them, and there is a criminal penalty for these unscrupulous breeders. And that is a huge deal. Look how much that would have protected and sort of created a framework, a basic framework for all the people who are backyard breeding. And what happened? It didn't go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere. Why? Well, we'll have to ask Representative Tyler Soroy again. Brevard County. What's your representative doing? I hope you love him for every other thing he's doing for you, because he has not been a friend to animals this year, and it's very upsetting. Because it seems like he cares about the environment with boats and our waterways, so I'm not sure where the disconnect is, so please ask him if you care. The other person who stalled this in the Senate is Senator Jay Collins of Hillsborough. What's wrong with this bill? We've got a pet overpopulation problem, and this was trying to help? If there was an issue with it, then let it go through the process so that you can help amend it or revise it to if you had a problem with it. But this got nowhere. And it's really unfair to those of us who love dogs and are frustrated with our pet overpopulation. I was also surprised that, so I'm a foster mom, and I was really surprised and kind of upset that not a lot of rescue groups were talking about this issue, this bill. And as a rescue mom, as a foster mom, I understand the rescue groups are inundated with pleas of help, that there is an inordinate amount of dogs and cats who need help in Florida. We're drowning in animals. I know, I understand. My heart breaks when a dog is euthanized at a shelter because there's not enough space and there's not enough time to find a good home. I understand the heartbreak. I understand the frustration. But rescue groups, until we start channeling our volunteers to help us get laws passed, we cannot stop the influx of dogs that need help. We've got to start working at the source they're coming from. And that's people who are breeding unscrupulously and people who are not spaying and neutering. And the only way is to pass a law to help our dogs. We're helping dogs one at a time here and there. I can only foster one or two. I only have so much money like a lot of other people. Most of us aren't rich. If we won the lottery, how much money would we spend to give these rescue groups? But we're saving one at a time instead of changing the law to change the system so we stop the flood. So please, if you have a rescue group, in between saving animals' lives, which is obviously important, pause for those 60 days. Find someone like me or a source to tell you which laws are going to help, and tell your volunteers, hey, if you can't give us money this week to donate, can you send an email to so-and-so and ask your rep can they please support this bill? And until we start doing that, we're going to keep getting emotionally frustrated and drained with the pet overpopulation problem. This next bill was a doozy, and it even made national news. This bill was called the Animal Welfare. It was Senate Bill 932, House Bill 381. And it made national news because part of the bill prevented basically dogs from sticking their head out the window. Does that ring a bell? It made the news nationwide because people were upset that they wouldn't be able to let their dogs hang their head out the windows. Well, again, that was one part of the bill. Did you know what the other part of the bill asked for? In cosmetic testing on animals, so our makeup, our hair products, no more testing on animals in Florida. That's a great thing, right? Like, why are we still testing on animals? I don't know. The other thing, it was no dog chaining. It would have prohibited dog chaining in Florida. You can Google it. It's really sad, though. Pictures of Floridians who chained their dogs right before the hurricane. And, of course, tragically, they passed away. So this bill, the same one that said you can't have your dog hang their head out the window, would have prevented this horrific practice of people chaining up your dog. The other, for our cat lovers, prevented decline throughout the state. How big is that for people who love cats? Huge. One of the other things it created was an animal abuse registry. Look at all this stuff that could have been done to help animals. And for those of us who would have been upset about the part of the bill about sticking the dog's head out of the window, it was amended to redact all of that. The beautiful part of these bills is once it goes through a process, you can say, look, I have 5 parts to this bill, and my citizens like 1, 2, and 3. They don't like 4, and they like 5. So we need to get rid of 4, so let's change the bill and move it along. That can be done. Was that done here? Well, thanks to Senator Lauren Book of Broward County. She tried. She got this bill filed to try to get it passed. And Representative Waldron of Palm Beach. Thank you, guys. However, guess who yet again was in charge of a chair and who wouldn't or didn't hear it? Representative Tyler Soroy of Brevard County. This is the second time, sir, all due respect, that there is another bill to massively help animals. And why wasn't this heard? If you live in Brevard County, ask him. Politely email him. I wanted you to pass the Animal Welfare Act. That was House Bill 381. What's your problem with it? And if you disagree with him, if you want it passed, then you have to decide if this is someone you want to vote for or not. But at least now you know. Is this person helping animals or is he not? And if he's not helping animals, he better be doing everything else you want him to do in the legislature. Also, Senator Joe Gruters of Sarasota and Manatee County. He was also a chair and could have heard this animal welfare bill. Nothing. They're either failing or refusing to help this bill. And why not? You could help dogs. You could help cats. You could create an animal abuse registry. What's not to love? Moving on to wildlife. Another one of my favorite animals. One of the bills, thanks to Senator Chev Jones of Miami-Dade and Representative Campbell of Broward County, thank you guys, they submitted a bill. It was called the Endangered and Threatened Species Bill. It was Senate Bill 1298 or House Bill 1229. And the idea was, okay, we want to protect certain species in Florida. And regardless of whether or not they're on the federal endangered species or threatened species list, it doesn't matter. We still want the FWC to treat them to protect them regardless of whether or not they're listed under the endangered species under federal law. So we want to protect our own animals. Makes sense, right? Hey, the federal government's doing its own thing. But here in Florida, we think certain animals belong on the endangered species list, and we don't have control over what's happening at the federal level, but we have control over what's happening in our state. So we want FWC to protect these animals, even if they're not listed on the endangered species list. We consider them that they need protection. But it was thanks to Representative James Buchanan in Sarasota. Did not hear it. He's the chair. Didn't hear it. Apparently didn't help it. And Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez of Miami-Dade. Again, both of these people are chairs. They could have helped. They could have heard this bill, but it went nowhere. These are chairs that have the authority and the power to do something. And they didn't help our wild animals. Why not? Why don't you ask? Send them an email. Give them a phone call. They're not going to know if wildlife is important to you. They can't read your mind, right? Just like in relationships. Your spouse, your significant other, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your sibling, your mom and dad, they can't read your mind. Well, maybe your mom can. No one can read your mind as what's important to you until you speak up. We can be sad about something, but until we channel that negative energy, we have to do something with that negative energy. When you're feeling sad about something, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to that dolphin. I can't believe that happened to the turtle. Take that negative energy and put it into something positive, and you will feel so much better. You will feel more in control. With all of the bills that I've gone through that did not pass, you might be wondering, did anything get done that help animals? Actually, one did. And it was thanks to Best Friends Society. They came down to Florida and got Florida Senate Bill 942, House Bill 941 passed to end breed restrictions all over Florida. So, if you don't know, Miami-Dade and a couple of other counties passed laws that basically designated a dog as dangerous just because it was a pit bull. And it's called breed-specific legislation. And that obviously hurts dogs. It hurts families because if they move and they can't find housing because of breed-specific legislation, the family feels like they have no choice but to surrender the dog. So, this new bill, it's on DeSantis's desk right now. This is May. This is June. We're wrapping up May. And it is on his desk waiting for signature, but it did pass. And basically it prevents local governments and public housing authorities from adopting ordinances or policies designating a dog as dangerous solely based on the dog's breed, weight, or size. And look at this. Look at my little baby pit bull. She's a sweetheart. And there is no reason to have breed-specific legislation and regulating a dog breed when the focus should be negligent owners. We should be passing laws about negligent owners, not about all pit bulls are bad or certain breeds are bad. It's called breed-neutral laws. And breed-neutral reckless owner laws are what we should be focusing on. And in case, as a side note, there was a study done by Science Magazine, by Kathleen Morrell. She's a dog geneticist at the University of Massachusetts. And her study 2,000 dogs, 128 breeds they looked at. And that study found, this is a recent study, April 2022, they found that, quote, dog breed is generally a poor indicator, a poor predictor of individual behavior. That's your newest study. So there you go. So I counted 8 bills-ish that were going to help animals. And the Florida legislature passed one. It also passed one to hurt animals. And you need to know it. It doesn't matter if you hear this 3 months from now, as long as you hear it before November 2024, because that's when you'll see it on your ballot. So instead of helping animals, the Florida legislature passed Joint Resolution 1157. And on your Florida ballot in 2024 is going to read a proposition for you to either vote yes or vote no. And this is the language. Fishing, hunting, and the taking of fish and wildlife, including by the use of traditional methods, shall be preserved forever as a public right and preferred means of responsibly managing and controlling fish and wildlife. It goes on to say this section does not limit the authority granted to the FWC under Section 9 of Title 4. So, the Florida legislature thinks that there is too many restrictions on hunting and fishing? The concern here is, why does the Florida legislature now, all of a sudden, want hunting to become a right, like our right to free speech? Why does that deserve to be up there? Why are we adding hunting, the right to hunt, to the Constitution? And the right, including by the use of traditional methods. Including traditional methods? So, can I throw a grenade at Bambi's mom under this? If this amendment passes and someone throws a grenade at Bambi's mom, is someone going to say, well, I have a Florida constitutional right to hunt, so you can't prohibit me from doing that? Or someone shooting a mama bear with her baby bear. Well, there's now a constitutional right to hunt. The concern about this proposal to amend our state constitution to add the right to hunt is, what are they really getting at? We don't know. Because, as everyone knows, you can go get a license to hunt. No, there's no one stopping you. So, we need to really be concerned about why all of a sudden the Florida legislature wants the right to hunt on our Constitution. It's really concerning. And it just makes you wonder what's really going on. What's really behind this? And because it's so broad, we don't know what the fallout would be. We need to have respectful regulations in place to protect mama bears and baby bears, deer families. And we don't know what will happen to these animal families if this proposal passes.